Hello, everyone. Welcome to Progressive HR Live. I'm your host today, Corrine Woodman-Hollebeck, and I'm the founder of Progressive HR. I have with me the wonderful Kristen Strunk, Director of Talent, Compensation, and Employee Experience from Harley-Davidson. How are you today, Kristen?
I'm doing great, Corrine. How are you this morning?
Excellent, excellent. So we're going to be talking about the truth about employee burnout today. So we have a number of questions lined up for everybody. This is an interactive live, so please feel free to add questions and comments in the question and comments in the comments. So please introduce yourself in the chat and let us know where you're streaming from, and we'll start our questions now. So Kristen, why did you create an article series on employee burnout?
Well, Corrine, I think one of the things that was important to me was to examine why employees were taking advantage of what was being called the Great Resignation. In my role as Director of Employee Experience, I was getting people sending me articles later last year that a lot of companies were giving a week off to deal and combat employee burnout. People were giving bonuses to combat employee burnout. And when we really start to dig into these things, I think they're a little bit more complicated than some of the headlines let on. So I wanted to dig into that a little bit more.
Thanks, Kristen. We have our next question for Kristen. So your first article in the series is titled A Week Off, 10,000 K, and a Puppy Will Not Fix Burnout. So a self-described tongue-in-cheek content. So why is this important?
So I think that it was important to take a look at this topic with a little bit of a lens towards some of the things that were being touted as solutions for employee burnout. And when we think about this, what I will call problem of employee burnout is something that can't necessarily just be fixed with money or time away or a puppy, right? It's not necessarily something that you can self-care your way out of. And I think that a lot of the advice that's being given or a lot of the comments that are being made really put the onus on either the company to give employees time off or the employees to do some type of self-care activity themselves to alleviate burnout. And I think there's a combination of things that need to happen. And to take a little bit of a more sassy, I would say, approach to that solution was something I wanted to make sure we were talking about.
Kristen, you had me at sassy. And those of you who haven't read Kristen's articles yet, I did leave a message in the comments before the live started with a link to each of the articles. And I don't have a favorite. I think like all the articles are 100% like so interesting and so important. But this is definitely my favorite title because I laughed when Kristen included a puppy in the title. Oh, sorry, I interrupted you, Kristen. Go ahead. What did you say?
Oh, no, I just think it's great that we have so many people to be part of the conversation because it's going to take people at all levels of organizations and across all industries to go ahead and really address this problem and start that conversation, not only with their organizations, but with themselves as they work to kind of move through employee burnout and think about what they want to do to take care of themselves.
100% agree. You know, I have an audience poll. So I'm going to take this down here and go back here. So I've got an audience poll. Audience, what is one initiative that your organization has enacted to combat burnout? Go ahead and drop your thoughts in or drop your answers in the comments, and Kristen and I will go on to the next question, and then we'll come back to your answers in just a moment. So Kristen, if organizations concentrate on addressing burnout, what are the 3 things that you suggest they act on?
I think if organizations want to look at burnout overall, I think there are a couple things that they really can focus on. And one of them is an organizational structure that works in this new way of working. And so we have a lot of organizations that are a lot more spread out, maybe partially hybrid, partially remote. This is definitely a different world. But what we're seeing from an organizational structure perspective, if you look at an org chart from today and one from the 1950s, all of the boxes still look the same. They might have different titles, but our organizations are still laid out the same. So I think one of the things they have to do is really look at the way they're structured and think about what should be a little different in those structures. I think the next thing that they really need to do is work with employees to talk about things not from a scarcity perspective, but from an opportunity and a transparency perspective. And so a lot of organizations, especially going into the next couple of years, might be talking about things in terms of not enough resources, not being able to hire enough employees. Maybe they're having issues with staffing and things of that nature. And so how organizations talk about those things is extremely important, because when organizations create a scarcity mindset, it really does soak into the people in the organization, and it's absorbed, and it can cause additional stress and additional strain, leading to burnout over time for employees. So I think those are a couple of things that organizations really can do to help employees think about things a little bit differently. I think the last thing is really thinking about how they work. And so I really look at the way that we are working now, collaboration, asynchronous work, not necessarily 8 to 5 meetings. In fact, I just came across a statistic just about an hour before we started. Asana did a new survey, and they said they interviewed about 10,000 workers. And what they found was in the US, 58% of employees spent their time on busy work, from non-essential administrative work to seeking status updates. And people are not necessarily being allowed to use the skills that they have either. And so changing how we work, what we're asking employees for in organizations, is going to be a really important part of this conversation as well, and eliminating those administrative tasks, the things that can be done by a bot, some of the other things that can be automated or even just not done, could be a really good way for organizations to address burnout.
That's really interesting, Kristen. And Kristen did mention that statistic from Asana, and talked about how can we, as leaders and leaders in organizations, really look at the work that people are doing and what can we ease up on the mundane task. And last week, actually two episodes ago, we did have Vijay Navaluri from TechForce AI, and TechForce AI is a digital enablement organization who basically helps organization digitally enable their employees with assistants that will do the mundane task and work for them, get this, overnight or on your lunch break, however you want to do it. So brings a whole new idea of transformation into organizations. Let's go to our audience here and look at our polls here. So, oh my goodness, for sharing. Christine has an answer here. So Christine at, I believe it's medical college is where Christine is currently working. And she said various virtual programs in our wellness program. And I think we have here, Nakona says wellness program videos, mental health campaign, take 10 meditation breaks. That's also interesting. And Scotty says all company recharge days included unscheduled holidays. Oh, that's interesting, unscheduled holidays. And then Daniel added, we've also done 2 recharge days so far this year. Those are interesting. Now, Danielle, were those 2 recharge days, were they like one after the other, or were they spaced out? So they were continuous or 2 spaced out? I'm interested to know. So we're going to go back to the questions for Kristen. So what can an individual do if they're stuck or feeling that they cannot leave their employer and they're feeling burnt out?
Corinne, this is such an important question, because a lot of what is out on, say, the internet or giving advice really is about what the individual can do. And we talk about things like self-care, right? So we talk about things like the meditation, we talk about things like the wellness. But what I would recommend people do is really pull back and do something that will help you evaluate, are you living the type of life that you want to be living? And I'm talking about across all areas of your life, whether it's financial, your involvement with the community, your involvement with friends and family. Are you able to grow and learn either in your current job or in a different part of the organization or in a different part of your life? So really taking a look across all areas of your life and thinking about, if I were to design the perfect life, and understanding that the perfect life might, for 99.9% of us, means that we have to earn an income, right? So we have to be able to do something that's going to bring in an income. Perhaps we need to make sure that we have medical insurance. Perhaps we want to add the benefits of retirement benefits or retirement support. So really evaluating what it is that you need to create the type of life that you want to live, and then thinking about how your current work situation fits into that life. And if you cannot just up and walk away from your employer, because 90% of the time that's not necessarily going to fix burnout. Picking up and moving to from one employer to another employer doesn't necessarily fix burnout, because it's happening across all industries. It's happening across all levels of organizations. It's happening across all different types of organizations, whether they're nonprofits or for-profits, whether they're part of the S&P 500, whether they're smaller startups. That is happening everywhere. So really thinking about what you can do to take control. If you are in a situation where you have an employer, I think it's important that you feel out how you can start those conversations with your leader or with your team about clearly setting priorities, working to clearly set boundaries. What are those things that are really necessary for you to do now? What are some things that can wait? Looking at your schedule and when you're replying to emails and things like that. But being able to have those conversations with your leader is really the place to start. And I think one of the things that might be a key for you is, how do you feel when you think about talking to your leader about this? If it gives you a pit in your stomach and you're thinking this is just not going to go well, is that really true? Have you seen that behavior from your leader, or are you just anticipating it's not going to go well? So really thinking through some of those things and having the courage to start the conversation, I think, is the most important part.
So, Kristen, one of the things that you and I were talking about just right before we were going live is also, not if you are a leader, also reading these articles to understand too, if you're the type of leader that is open to hearing these questions from an individual. And I know when I read, so the third article, which is kind of the question we just asked about, dropped this morning, and I was reading it, and I was also doing, Kristen has 2 assessments in there. One assessment was on self-care, and one assessment was on boundaries, if I can remember right.
Yep.
And I was doing these assessments, and I'm just like, oh wow, this is really bringing about some clarity and some reflection for me. So I do suggest to everybody to go in and read the series of articles, and then to go ahead and really do those self-assessments on the third article. And when we're finished here with the live, I'll also drop those links in, or you can always just go right over to Kristen's LinkedIn profile and see the articles in her recent posts. So another poll for the audience here. Actually, I'm going to go to the comments because we've got a few coming in here. Oh my. Let's see here. I got to get my place here. Daniel answered the question that the 2 recharge days were spaced out. They had one in the fall and one in the late winter. And this means like by the school year. And then Danny also said that our board has also provided take-home dinner for all staff twice this year as well. I think, again, kind of, go ahead, Kristen, you wanted to say something?
Oh, no, I think those are really great indicators that an organization understands that burnout is real, and there are some real tactical things that they can do. And those types of things really do help in situations like that as well.
And one of the points that Kristen makes is that you have to get creative about how you're taking care of burnout and the benefits that you're providing for your employees in regards to burnout. And interestingly enough, next episode, which will be in the beginning of April, excuse me, it is already April, beginning of May, will be John Adcock, who is the Senior Vice President of Human Resources for Care.com. And we're going to be talking about creative benefits for employees, like really creative benefits, going outside the box with benefits. So thank you so much, Scotty. I'm not even sure this whole thing, this essay, thank you, Scotty, can appear on the LinkedIn Live, but I'm going to try here. So, so we've done our recharge days at times when organizations have needed a collective breather, such as after product launch or a large cross-functional effort. We have unlimited PTO, but often when we return from PTO, can feel like you didn't actually get a break. Yeah, Kristen and I were also talking about that yesterday, and you need to catch up. So when we all take off together and disconnect, we are able to simply enjoy the day completely unstructured and know that additional work won't be waiting when you return. That completely agree. I think that's a wonderful benefit that your employer can provide for you. And then Elena stepping in and discussing boundaries really helps. Completely agree on that. Let's see here. We're going to go quickly talking about boundaries. I got another poll for everybody. So, so in Kristen's third article, when I mentioned about the assessment, she says, we should really think about our boundaries that we need to create around work and around our lives to have a whole life that we want to live. And we have to get very honest with ourselves about what is really expected in our job and the story we're telling ourselves about what is expected. And so audience poll on a scale of 1 to 5, how good are you about setting your boundaries? 1 being not really great at all, but I'm planning on working it, to 5 being, yes, I consistently set boundaries and I'm very happy with that. And I've gotten over that feeling of, ooh, should I have done that? So go ahead and drop your numbers in the comments and we'll get back to that, answering that poll after a quick question for Kristen. Actually, I wanted to mention another quote from Kristen's article that, kind of showing ourselves here is that Kristen said that the problem that she's seeing with boundaries is that individuals don't stick with them, and that they slide a little here and slide a little there, and all of a sudden there are no boundaries, and we're just as frustrated as when we started. And she quotes here, and I'm just as guilty as anyone for not keeping my boundaries. And I would say, me too,
Yes.
Kristen. Yeah. I kind of went over this poll in my head and I'm like, am I a 4? Am I a 3? I'm really great setting boundaries, like work boundaries, but when it comes to my personal relationships, my immediate family, I'm saying like about a 3, except, when my kids give me the puppy dog eyes. And not great at all with my outside family, like my parents. Parents are hard. But I realized that one of the things that Kristen's article brought up for me is that I really need to do a better job about setting those boundaries with my parents for a healthier life.
Yeah. And Corinne, I think the really interesting thing about that is that when we think about burnout, we tend just to think about our job. We tend just to think about our work environment. But when we're really talking about burnout, we are talking about a sustained feeling of helplessness and hopelessness and overwhelm that does flow into all areas of our lives, if not necessarily caused by some of those areas of our lives. And so it's the combination of that and the sustainment of that over time that leads to this feeling of burnout. We're talking about it mainly in a work environment right now. There are tools you can leverage your out of office on your email. You can, set your chat, your instant messaging to do not disturb for a while. You can draw some boundaries around how often you're going to check your email. There are tools that you can leverage. In fact, MS Teams has built in, a virtual commute that it tells you when you should kind of log off, and it gives you a little 10-minute meditation like we were talking about. It asks you how you're feeling. So there are those types of tools out there. But when we think about burnout and we think about the collective exhaustion that we are feeling, while work is contributing and our current environment in our professions might be contributing to that, there are a number of other things outside of just work that are contributing to this really collective, overwhelming sense that we have of maybe being paralyzed or not being able to make a decision or feeling this constant stress. And so I think that's one of the reasons that evaluating every area of your life in order to get really, really clear on what you want and need from your job is really important.
And as well, going back to the assessments, you had an assessment, like a really quick assessment, personal assessment for also like well-being, like physical, mental. Right. Am I at where I really truly want to be at? And I know that when I was answering that question, I was like, yeah, I'm happy in my life. I'm really, really happy in my life. But then answering your questions, I'm like, you know what? There's more I can do. And it's not like a self-pressure thing. It's more like, I'm really not that happy as I put the mask on to be,
Right.
And these are the things I can control. And there's other things I can't control. I'm only going to focus on what I can control per your post a while ago too, as well. So we got lots and lots of comments, but then I want to go back to the post about what I can control and what I can't control. So I am going to find where we are here. So Jessica says about a 3 to 4. Good on you, Jessica. I think being a 3 or a 4 is good. Yeah. And Nokona said 3 to 4, and Scotty said 4, and Sylvia said 5. Great on you, Sylvia. And then Nicole 4, Catherine 3. I'm terrible with adhering to boundaries. Again, I don't think you should put pressure on yourself as well. You just need to be, when you set a boundary, or if you slide on a boundary, just being aware of it, being aware and promising or saying to yourself, okay, I can totally do better next time. And here we go. Rachel, benefits are wonderful and that they do need to be communicated regularly through a variety of channels. It can be helpful to have professionals do an audit where and how your benefits are communicated from a variety of angles through the employee life cycle at key moments. Exactly. And also looking at inclusive benefits as well, that cover whole employee populations. Thank you, Rachel. And I think that was a comment back to when we were talking about what can employers do, or how employers can be responsible for burnout. And Amanda says, it would be interesting to hear Kristen's personal experience with burnout. That's a great question. I'm going to get through these comments and then we're going to talk about
let's do it.
Thanks for bringing that up, Amanda. And then Christine said, I'm good at setting boundaries, but since COVID and now working remote, I have found that others disregard my boundaries. Oh, that's interesting. When I attempt to maintain them, others become upset. It seems that since we are not forced to be remote, we are forced not to be allowed to take breaks. Okay. So I think maybe we'll try to get back to that one too and ask Kristen's opinion on that. Nicole says, I have 2 hours of focus time blocked out of my calendar every day to eliminate anxiety, including back-to-back scheduling and not feeling like there's anything accomplished other than meetings that day. 100%. I block out time for walks. But talking about boundaries, I do tend to answer phone calls and reply to messages on my walks. So,
well, and I think that even goes to Christine's last comment. I try to do the same thing of blocking out time, but I'm hunted down via my cell phone. I think we can talk about this briefly and really think about the why. Why do you feel that you have to reply in the minute? What are the expectations your leader or your peers are putting on you? And is it realistic? And is it anything you've really talked through? So as a team, have you set some what we at Harley Davidson call team norms around, you know, people on my team are not going to hear from me on the weekend. I will type 101 emails over the weekend because it's when it works for me to do that. I don't send them until Monday morning. So being able to really talk through that feeling of I have to respond right now, I have to get back to this person immediately, you might want to step back a little bit and actually have a conversation about response time and what constitutes an emergency. So we joked at the beginning of COVID when people were home with their children, put a sign on your door that basically says, if there is blood or bones or fire, you can interrupt me while I'm on a call, otherwise leave me alone, right? So have that conversation about what constitutes an emergency and the response time that kind of each of those things demands. And then really think about getting everybody on your team on the same page so that those expectations are level set. So that's one conversation. And again, being courageous enough to start that conversation is important. Going back to Amanda's question about my personal experience with burnout, I will say that throughout my 25-ish year career, I have experienced what I would consider to be prolonged burnout, probably 2 or 3 different times. And there are some cues for me personally where I know I'm getting very much to that state of needing to reassess and figure out what exactly my issues are. I think that it really comes down to I start to hear the phrase shut up in my head when other people are talking. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter what they're saying. I hear it when my boss talks to me. I hear it when my husband talks to me. I hear it when my mother talks to me. But when I start to hear that voice in my head, it means that I am, this close to the edge. And that's usually taken me a while to get to. And so I know then that I need to step back and start to reassess what is happening and what are my priorities in my life, not necessarily just in my work. And so the other thing that happens to me is I start to get really frustrated when I drive. I typically do not do that. So I know that when I am, in my car yelling at the little old lady next to me, that for me is a clue that something is not right. And so those moments of self-awareness, of understanding that there are contributing factors and all of those things together really are impactful in the way that that I tend to relate with other people outside of the of my work environment. I think the other thing is that when I have done that, and I am a list maker, I think I have about 7 different notebooks sitting right here to the left of me that have lists for just about everything. I know that when I get to a point and I am facing burnout, I need to make a list and I need to start telling people no. I need to start backing away from things. I need to start really focusing on a couple key things that are important to me, whether it is my job or my health or my family, but I need to narrow down my focus and I need to let go of control. So Corrine referenced just being able to identify what are the things in your control and what are the things that are not in your control, and being able to let go of those things that you cannot control. That is something that I get to a few different times a year, is just kind of that step back and saying, okay, I need to think about what I'm doing. And as a leader, part of my responsibility is to help my team deal with burnout. And we do that in a variety of ways, but there's a lot of different conversations happening.
So early on, Kristen and I have known each other for years and years and years. I don't know, maybe 4 years now. Yeah. And we've worked on a few different projects together. And there was one time when I was experiencing some burnout, and Kristen says, Corrine, what you have to remember is when you see an email, ask yourself, does this need to be responded to within 24 hours? Will something change if you don't respond to this email within 24 hours. And I always use that as my yardstick, when I accidentally pick up my phone at night and a notification flashes forward and I'm like, okay, look at the email. No hot phone. No, I shouldn't have done that. And then I ask myself, does this need to be responded to within 24 hours?
Well, and I think we believe that if we just take care of it right now, we don't have to do it later. But here's the myth about that is that all of a sudden now you're 5 emails in and you are missing your kid's bedtime story, or you feel like somebody else has done that to you by sending you these emails. No. This is something that we can control. And so I think we have to, again, get very clear on the stories that we're telling ourselves. If we're really thinking about this, team norms in our teams and having some open conversations, it's not going to fix everything, but it's that start of the conversation where you can actually go to your team and say, you know what, I am struggling right now. I need to focus. And those things are important. But in our personal lives, we need to have the same conversations. I'm struggling right now. I'm trying to keep my head above water. I'm feeling like I don't have control. So I need to, we're going to stay home and we're going to celebrate this holiday just at home with our immediate family, or I'm not bringing anything to the potluck, or whatever the case might be. But we need to be very clear on the stories that we're telling ourselves and whether those are real or whether they are things that we assume other people are thinking about us.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. And I'm one to always, I used to be one to always tell myself stories, and I've been starting to get better at that. And again, catching myself, is this a big thing? Is this something that can wait or not? So a quick comment from Melinda. I love team norms. They help set the approved team dynamics for the group and maintain psychological safety. Team norms are best when reviewed on a regular cadence to see if they are still supporting the team, things that may need to evolve and change. And team norms should also be revisited when welcoming new team members. Completely agree. And then there is a comment from Christine, but I'm thinking I'm going to send that to you so you can maybe help Christine with that offline.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I did want to get to this one question here, and you kind of touched on it briefly. But for those who have been following Kristen has made it kind of like her personal mission to help combat burnout at Harley-Davidson. So I wanted to ask you, what are the problems in regard to burnout that you are examining at Harley-Davidson?
So I think a few different things. I think that we are really working to move towards an environment that is based in outcome and achievement rather than necessarily hours of time spent on the computer or hours of time spent in meetings. And I think we're really trying to build our awareness around what are the things that we can do to impact the organization. We have a lot of conversations around what is the work that we can stop doing. And if any organization out there has come up with a way to actually execute on that and actually stop doing some things, I would love to hear it, because I don't know that any organization ever really gets there. So that's kind of one area, is really that area of focus around what are our outcomes, not necessarily how many hours are we working. The other piece for us is that we are also moving to a flexible time off or a flexible vacation policy. We are really excited to kick that off because we think that it's going to be a great opportunity, again, for employees and leaders to have those conversations about the priorities, about what is most important, and then being able to rest and recharge when necessary. So those are a couple of things that we are really looking at right now, organization-wide, when we think about this transition into this new way of working.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy to hear about the flex work. I think that we are at a point right now where, we have to just trust people, that they feel that there's purpose enough in their work, that they're they're going to do it. They're not going to slack off. And I've always thought, like, when going back to when we were talking before about the structure of organizations, I always felt that was kind of like counterintuitive to the way humans interact with each other and the way humans thrive. And so I think that there is need for some structure, but not so completely rigid and like this ideal that you need to have like 5 years of experience before you move into the next role. Not because you yourself need 5 years experience, but because people that have your predecessors before, that's what it's taken them to get there. And so
Right.
any type of like change to that is basically saying like, oh, this person is a big star in the organization. But no, I mean, again, that too, I think we talk about career pathing a lot, and
Right.
go back to, again, and I think this was in your second article about how employers are responsible for burnout, was having conversations with people and what are the expectations to reach next.
Right.
And I think we're in a point now where if you want to reach next, you can do it like maybe in a year if you put the effort into learning yourself and slotting yourself into projects. So back when I was in corporate, I think it was a 5 year, like that's where I came up for the number, a 5 year jump from going from regional manager to VP for absolutely no reason at all.
Right.
So quick comment that came in. Rachel said it's tough to embrace the stop doing since it often threatens the justification for some people's roles, especially in the middle and senior management, and they have to see that they still have a role that plays a matter to the organization. Yeah. I think here is that we need to, again, embracing new work ways, is that if you're in the organization with the way that, microlearning is right now, you will have a role. It may just not be the one that you are working in currently. And I think that there's always a better opportunity for someone.
Well, and I think that also goes to what we've been talking about the structure of an organization. There are, those boxes on an org chart are very good for illustrative purposes, but that's just what they are. They're boxes in a chart. And sometimes people believe that when we are talking about boundaries, we mean, the square around their name on an org chart, and this is as far as I go. And so one of these ideas around thinking about the organizational structure and, what if we had no more formal jobs? Full stop. You took your skills to an organization and you said, these are the things that I can do for you. Put me in coach wherever you need me. I don't need to be in human resources. I don't need to be in supply chain. I don't need to be in manufacturing, wherever you need me. But this is my skill set. These are my experiences. This is what I bring to the organization. What if we did that instead of focus on job title or where you sit in a hierarchy? And so when we start to think around those structures, because Rachel's absolutely right, part of my job, I have to give a weekly report to my manager every week. That requires that I go to the 13 people who report to me and I say, summarize what's going on in your areas, right? So she's absolutely right. I'm creating this make work funnel because that's part of my responsibility. It's part of my leader expectation. When we've had those conversations about expectation, there are a few things that I absolutely have to do. This weekly report is one of them. So when we think about the opportunity that we have to say, okay, if we reimagined an organization where we weren't confined by jobs per se, what does that look like? How does that look different? If I don't have to protect what's mine, to Rachel's point, if I don't have to hang on to this so tightly, if I could open my hands, work with a growth mindset, and think about what could be, what does that change in an organization? How does that change your approach? And it's one of the ways we can start to think about handling burnout a little bit differently.
I think that's really, really great for reflection, Kristen. I think we should all take some time, as we are majority HR leaders here on this audience on this live. Take some time to reflect on that. And I'd love everybody after this live, if they have time, to drop a comment in about Kristen's question about what if, and answer that question. Be as creative as you possibly can, you know. I just realized their time and we're running up on our close time. So I wanted to let everybody know that if you need, I'm going to kind of keep us on a little bit over the 45-minute mark here. So, but if you do need to leave now, because you do have something back to back from this live, thank you so much for joining us today, and greatly appreciate all of your audience comments and engagement. And, you know, just keep, and you should follow Kristen on LinkedIn. And you can also follow her hashtag responsible leadership. Kristen, is there any other way that people can connect with you, or how you would like people to connect with you?
I think LinkedIn would be the best way right now. I think if you reach out to me, I can definitely start a conversation. We can determine what it is that might work best for you. I think there were a couple comments that we wanted to get back to, so we can do that offline.
Excellent. Thanks, Kristen. So we already had Mary add her answer to the what if, and it would be, the possibilities would be endless. Agreed.
Wouldn't that be fun?
Yeah, I know. How creative can we be? So quickly to wrap up here, I wanted to let everybody know, I had talked about this earlier on, that John Adcock, SVP of HR with Care.com, is coming on in May 10th, the same time. And we're taking a break at the end of April here, just, you know, setting some boundaries, taking a little break, getting some breathing room for myself. And so we'll be back in May with John Adcock. And then May 24th, Arosha Brower, the CEO and co-founder from Quan Wellbeing, will be on. So there's kind of like this kind of theme we're going through the month of April and May, and well-being and benefits. Currently, those two events are not up, but once they are, if you go ahead and put yes in the comments, I will send you an invite to those. So you can follow me, Corinne Woodham-Hollaback, on LinkedIn, as well as Progressive HR on LinkedIn, or my hashtag Resourceful Humans. I've got a few more comments coming in. Melinda says, this is awesome. Thank you. Love the what if challenge. Love that. And from, I'm going to see who this is, Yolanda, that this live has been very refreshing and really hones on reflecting from past to present. Yes, completely agree. And Inez says, thank you. And oops, Christine said, love this. My mind is whirling with ideas. Thank you, Corinne and Kristen. Lots of yes. And oh, Nicole said, May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So I kind of missed that, but I didn't, it's not that I didn't miss it. I just intentionally didn't plan it to be that way. So everyone, thank you so much for your audience engagement and your questions and your comments and your engagement on the poll. Greatly appreciate you. And Kristen, thank you so much for coming on and talking to the Progressive HR Live audience. I heart you.
It was so good to be here. Great conversation.
Thanks, everybody. And everybody who we're supposed to follow up with, we will after the live. Have a fab Tuesday, everybody.